My dad, bless his trusting heart, thought he was doing me a favor. "Just for small buys, Lily," he said, handing me his bank card. "Emergencies, a coffee with a friend, that kind of thing. Don't go crazy." He saw me as his responsible, studious daughter, the one who would never stray from the straight and narrow path. And for a while, I played the part perfectly. The first few weeks, it was exactly what he intended. A coffee here, a quick lunch there. A little bit of freedom felt amazing. A taste of independence I hadn't had before. But freedom, I learned, is a dangerous currency when you're broke and living in a world of wants. My friends were always talking about new clothes, the latest gadgets, concerts. I'd sit there, smiling and nodding, feeling the sting of my own empty wallet. It was a dull ache that grew into a sharp, insistent pain. The card in my purse felt heavy, a secret waiting to be revealed. One evening, after a particularly frustrating conversation about a dress I couldn't afford, I found myself in an almost empty store. My hand trembled as I picked out a simple black skirt. At the register, I heard my dad's voice in my head. "Just for small buys." But the cashier's friendly smile and the gentle beep of the machine were all the permission I needed. The transaction went through. It was so easy. A rush of adrenaline, a mix of fear and exhilaration, shot through me. It wasn't just a skirt. It was a symbol. A tiny, insignificant betrayal that felt monumentally liberating. That night, I checked the balance on my phone, just to be sure. The amount was so small, a drop in the ocean of his savings. My guilt was a tiny ember, easily extinguished by the thrill of what I had done. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a small indulgence. But that ember was already beginning to glow, promising warmth and comfort in the cold reality of my life. And hey, if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The thrill of that first purchase quickly faded, replaced by a new, more dangerous feeling. Entitlement. My dad's card wasn't just for emergencies anymore. It was my solution to every problem. A new pair of sneakers? Swipe. A night out with friends that cost more than my weekly allowance? Swipe. I was no longer an observer in my social circle. I was an active participant, and it felt incredible. The compliments on my new clothes and the invitations to exclusive events fed my ego like a drug. I was finally the person I wanted to be, the person my friends saw me as, and all it cost was a number on a screen that wasn't even mine. The lies started small, too. "Oh, my aunt gave me this shirt." Or, "I got it on sale, it was a steal." It was a constant performance, a careful dance of deception. My dad, always busy with work, rarely checked his accounts. He had built his life on trust, on the belief that his family would never betray him. He saw me studying, working on my school projects, and he saw a reflection of his own hard work. He was proud. And his pride, ironically, was the fuel for my secret. I felt a pang of guilt every time he looked at me with that proud, loving expression, but it was easily buried beneath the excitement of my next purchase. The purchases grew bolder. I no longer shopped for small buys. I went for the expensive jacket, the designer handbag I had been dreaming of. The total at the register climbed, but the fear didn't. It was replaced by a cold, calculated confidence. I knew the system. I knew he wouldn't notice a few $100s here and there. It was his money. But it felt like my life. The cold, sterile fluorescent lights of the mall became my safe haven, a place where I could be someone else, someone better, richer. The outside world, with its gray skies and cold wind, faded away as I swiped. My life became a fragile house of cards. I had my friends and my new lifestyle, all built on a foundation of lies. The conversations at home with my dad felt like a constant balancing act. "How's school, Lily?" he'd ask, and I'd give him a generic answer, careful not to let anything slip. The truth felt like a heavy stone in my stomach, a constant weight I had to carry. I started avoiding him, making excuses to stay out late with friends or lock myself in my room. My brother, Sam, noticed the change first. "You're different, Lily," he said one day, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's going on?" I brushed him off, telling him he was overreacting. But Sam wasn't easily fooled. He saw me bring in new bags from stores I couldn't possibly afford. He saw me wearing things that didn't match my supposed budget. He didn't confront me directly, not at first. Instead, he started paying attention to my dad's habits. He saw the bank statements pile up on the kitchen counter, untouched. He saw the way my dad would glance at them, then turn away, his mind on other things. The unease in Sam's eyes was a silent judgment, a reminder of the person I was becoming. The weather seemed to mirror my inner turmoil. A cold, relentless rain fell for days, making the city feel like a dreary prison. I'd sit by my window, watching the rain blur the lights of the city, feeling a sense of isolation even when I was with my friends. The constant need for more, for new things, was an insatiable hunger. I was always chasing the next high, the next purchase, the next moment of false happiness. The initial guilt had been replaced by a gnawing emptiness that no amount of shopping could fill. I was no longer stealing for wants. I was stealing to feel something, anything, to escape the person I was becoming. The day it all fell apart started like any other. The sun was out, a rare sight after days of rain, and I felt a brief flicker of hope. I was out with friends, enjoying a carefree afternoon, when my phone rang. It was my dad. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it I had never heard before. "Lily," he said, "I need you to come home. Now." The cold knot in my stomach tightened, and my hands started to sweat. I knew this was it. When I got home, the house was silent. The air was thick with tension. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of bank statements laid out neatly in front of him. My brother, Sam, was standing by the door, his arms crossed, his face a mask of disappointment. My dad didn't shout. He didn't scream. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep, heartbreaking sadness. "Lily," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I checked the balance. He pointed a trembling finger at the statements. The numbers were all there, the dates, the stores, the growing amounts. "I trusted you." The 3 words hung in the air, heavier than any accusation. My carefully constructed world shattered in that moment. The clothes, the bags, the new life I had built, they all felt cheap and meaningless. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't look at my dad, at the man who had worked so hard, who had given me so much, who had loved me unconditionally. I couldn't look at Sam, the brother who had seen through my lies. The silence was deafening, filled with my own unsaid apologies, my pathetic excuses. I had stolen his money, but more than that, I had stolen his trust. And that was a debt I could never repay. The atmosphere in our house after the discovery was like a perpetual winter. My dad's sadness was a cold blanket that hung over everything. He stopped talking to me, not out of anger, but from a place of profound disappointment. He wasn't yelling. He was just gone. The man who used to talk to me about his day, who'd ask about my friends, was now a ghost in his own home. He would come home from work, go straight to his room, and emerge only for dinner, where we would eat in a silence so heavy it was suffocating. Sam, my brother, didn't talk to me either. He saw what I had done, and he saw the pain in our father's eyes. His disappointment was a constant, piercing stare that followed me everywhere. I was grounded, of course. My phone was taken away, the car keys were hidden, and my computer was monitored. But the punishments felt hollow compared to the real consequence, the loss of my family. I tried to talk to my dad, to apologize, but the words felt cheap and empty. "I'm sorry, Dad," I'd say, and he'd just nod, his eyes distant, as if he were looking through me, not at me. The silence was a constant reminder of my betrayal. I was isolated, not just from my friends and my old life, but from the people who mattered most. The material things I had stolen started to feel like a cage. The clothes hung in my closet, a monument to my greed and dishonesty. I couldn't bear to look at them. I started leaving them in a pile on my floor, a mess of expensive fabric and cheap lies. The thrill was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. The sun still shone outside, but my world was gray. My friends eventually stopped calling. My text messages went unanswered. My new identity, the one I had built on my dad's money, crumbled around me. I was alone, and for the first time, I had to face the consequences of my actions without a new purchase to distract me. A few weeks turned into a month, and the silence at home became unbearable. One evening, my mom, who had been away visiting family, returned. She took one look at the atmosphere in the house and knew something was terribly wrong. She sat me down in my room, not with anger, but with a quiet, firm resolve. "Lily," she said, her voice soft but direct. "Your father is heartbroken. He worked for every penny. He wasn't rich, but he made sure we had a good life. You need to understand what you've done, not just to him, but to our family." Her words were a wake-up call. They weren't about the money. They were about the trust, the love I had betrayed. My mom became the bridge. She talked to my dad, trying to soften his stance, reminding him that I was still his daughter. She talked to me, not as an accomplice, but as a guide, pushing me to face the truth. She made me get a job. It was a part-time position at a local coffee shop. The work was simple but physically demanding. My hands, used to swiping a card, were now busy wiping tables, serving customers, and cleaning coffee machines. The small amount of money I earned felt more valuable than anything I had ever stolen. It was a small but significant step toward independence and responsibility. The cold weather of the past month finally broke, and the sun shone with a gentle warmth. My mom's presence was like that sunlight, a source of comfort and warmth in a house that had been cold for too long. My relationship with my dad was still fractured, but there were small signs of change. One evening, he came into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. "How was work?" he asked, his voice low. I fumbled for a moment, surprised by the question. "It was okay," I said, a small, genuine smile on my face. It was just a small exchange, but it felt like a monumental step, a tiny crack in the wall I had built, a single ray of light breaking through the darkness. The job at the coffee shop was humbling. I was interacting with all sorts of people, from grumpy morning commuters to cheerful regulars. I learned to make small talk, to be polite, and to work for what I wanted. The small paychecks I earned were my first true taste of independence, and I started putting them away, a tiny fund to repay my dad. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I came home to find my dad sitting in the living room, a book on his lap. He looked tired, but his eyes weren't as distant as they used to be. I took a deep breath and sat down across from him. "Dad," I started, my voice trembling. "I need to talk to you." He put his book down and waited, his expression unreadable. "I'm so sorry," I said, the words finally tumbling out. "Not just for taking the money. I'm sorry for everything, for lying to you, for breaking your trust. I was so caught up in what I thought I needed, in trying to be someone I wasn't. I didn't think about you, about how hard you work, about what I was doing to our family." The tears I had been holding back for weeks finally came, a flood of shame and regret. I told him about the pressure I felt, the empty feeling inside, the ridiculous belief that things could make me happy. I confessed everything. My dad listened, his face softening with every word. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. The city lights outside the window seemed to blur through my tears. He finally stood up, walked to a window, and looked out at the street. "Lily," he said, his voice quiet, "I saw the person you were becoming. I saw you drifting away. I just didn't know why. I didn't want to believe it." He turned back to me, his eyes filled with a sad understanding. "The money. We can fix that. It's not about the money. It's about you. It's about finding your way back to who you are." He walked over, and for the first time in months, hugged me. It wasn't a tight, warm hug, but it was a beginning. A fragile, hopeful start to a long road of healing. And with that emotional chapter, we're nearing the end of our story. If you're invested in Lily's journey and want to see how she rebuilds her life and her family, make sure you're subscribed. Don't miss the final chapters of this powerful story, which are all part of this video. My conversation with my dad was a turning point. It didn't magically fix everything, but it opened a door. The silence in the house was replaced by small, hesitant conversations. He started asking about my job, and I would tell him about the customers, the different types of coffee, the challenges of working with my hands. I started to see him not just as the man I had betrayed, but as a person with his own worries and struggles. He'd tell me stories about his work, and I would listen, truly listen, for the first time in years. Our relationship was being rebuilt, one small, honest conversation at a time. My brother Sam was a tougher nut to crack. He had seen the full extent of my betrayal, and his trust was harder to earn back. I didn't push him. I just tried to be there, to be a good sister. I'd offer to help him with his homework, or just sit with him in the living room and watch a movie without trying to escape. Slowly, his icy exterior began to thaw. One day, he came into my room and saw me counting my coffee shop earnings. "What's that for?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. "I'm saving up," I said, a little defensively. "I want to pay Dad back. Every cent." He just nodded, but for the first time, I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. The weather had finally settled into a bright, crisp autumn. The air was cool, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. I would walk to work every morning, feeling the chill on my face and watching the city come alive. The world no longer felt like a backdrop for my selfish desires. It was real, and I was a part of it. The constant hunger for new things was gone, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. I was working, saving, and rebuilding my life. The journey was long and hard, but every small step, every honest moment with my family, felt like a victory. Even though my family was starting to heal, the consequences of my actions were far-reaching. The debt I owed my dad was significant, and my small salary from the coffee shop meant it would take a long time to pay back. I was grounded for over a year, missing out on parties, trips, and major social events. My old friends had moved on, and the new friendships I was trying to build were based on a different foundation, one of honesty and humility. It was a lonely time, but it was also a time of profound growth. I had to face the reality of my mistakes and live with the consequences, not just a day or a week, but month after month. The most difficult part was the internal struggle. I was haunted by my past self, by the girl who had so easily justified her actions. I would replay moments in my head, the moment I first swiped the card, the lies I told, the look on my dad's face when he found out. The shame was a constant companion. It was a heavy burden, but it was a necessary one. It kept me grounded, a constant reminder of the person I didn't want to be anymore. My dad and Sam saw my efforts. They saw that I was genuinely remorseful, that I was working to become a better person. Their forgiveness wasn't a single event. It was a slow, gradual process, built on my consistent actions. I started to appreciate the simple things. a walk with my mom, a movie night with my brother, a quiet conversation with my dad over coffee. These small moments, once overshadowed by my constant desire for more, were now the most valuable parts of my life. The city, which once seemed like a stage for my performance, now felt like a home, a community. The weather turned colder again, but I was no longer isolated. The cold wind was just that, wind, and the gray skies held a promise of rain, not a reflection of my inner turmoil. I was learning to live with myself, with my past, and with the long, challenging journey ahead. 2 years passed. I had worked through high school, saved every spare cent, and finally, the day came. I had the full amount of money I had stolen from my dad. The cash was in an envelope, a thick, heavy weight in my hand. It was all my own money, earned through hard work, sweat, and humility. I found my dad in the living room reading. I sat down next to him and handed him the envelope. He looked at it, then at me, and a wave of emotion passed through his eyes. He opened it, looked at the money, and then looked back at me. "Lily," he said, his voice thick. "It's all there, Dad," I said, my voice shaking a little. "Every penny." He took my hand, the envelope still in his other. "Keep it," he said softly. "You earned it." It was never about the money, Lily. It was about you learning to be the person you were always meant to be, the person I always believed you were. The tears in my eyes blurred the room. He didn't want the money. He wanted me back. He wanted his daughter, not the expensive clothes or the lies. He just wanted me. He put the money back in my hand. "It's your new beginning," he said. And this time, the hug he gave me was tight and warm, the kind I had been missing for years. My brother, Sam, came into the room and saw the scene. He didn't need to say anything. A simple smile and a nod were enough. I had paid my debt, not with money, but with time, hard work, and a profound change of heart. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm, golden glow through the window. It wasn't the end of my journey, but it was a powerful, emotional close to this chapter of my life. I had hurt the people I loved, stolen from the man who trusted me most, and in the end, the consequences of my actions brought me to a place of genuine growth and emotional maturity. I lost my way, but with the support of my family and my own hard work, I finally found my way back home, to myself.